should have been clear from the very beginning. If you don't really have what we would call a moat, then you are at risk because these companies have billions of dollars of money and some brilliant business people behind the scenes who are going to put you out of business. It's just really, it sucks, but that is a real concern.
The water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder Secrets.
Hello, Liz O'Sullivan. Welcome to the Founder Secrets podcast.
Hi, everyone.
So Liz is the co-founder of Vera.ai, and really exciting to have a real AI expert. How long have you been doing AI stuff for?
Gosh, I've been doing business type jobs for AI companies my whole career, about 12 years now, all startups in New York.
Before everybody, like my dad in Romania just asked me, what do I think about AGI and artificial intelligence? Like, what? Like, since when did it? Anyway, so you did it from way before everybody and us started getting so excited about it. So it's really great to have you on. And you just raised a $2.7 million round for Vera. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, we have been doing AI since before people cared about it, but also since before it worked. So very different times, different things to worry about.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, it's not an easy time to raise a round. And I think this sort of year separates the companies that raise a round just because it's a hot market to the companies that really, 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 really deserve it. And I think that like puts you at the top of being able to do that. So congrats again. And so diving into AI, I guess I'm wondering, to your point you just made, is it, some people talk about how, this has been going on forever. It's just statistics and equations. It's sort of an incremental progress that we've been going all along. It's not like some magical thing happening now. We're scared AI is going to kill us. What do you think of that view? Where do you stand on that?
Oh my goodness. Yes, it is a very good question, especially since if you've been doing tech for long enough, this is maybe your third or fourth wave of chatbots. I think the big difference right now is that these ones seem to actually work pretty well. So all the promises from 2003 are coming true. And so I mean, it depends on what kind of AI you're talking about. It's a huge, huge field, very big umbrella term. I think a lot of people right now are thinking about generative AI, which has its own very unique set of challenges and problems and wonder and excitement and possibility that are now finally motivating a very large business cohort to actually do something with it. Study after study for so many years was showing that 80% or more of AI projects and products were, especially in enterprise settings, just not making it off the shelf. They would pilot programs and then they would just go rot somewhere and waste a ton of money. And now it's become a board level conversation. You're talking to your investors about it. It's definitely on your website, on your pitch deck. You're doing something with AI. And now the question of how to do that, how do we put it into practice? That's the one that we're tackling at Vera. And
I know that you talk about kind of regulations around AI and kind of guardrails around some of those things. I know you were just in DC kind of talking about this kind of work. Can you speak to it from, in your mind, kind of the regulatory perspective? It feels to me like a Wild West right now, that kind of anyone can do anything. And I'm curious how you feel about that. And also, where would you like to kind of steer that conversation if you were in charge?
My goodness, we could spend an hour a day for the rest of our lives talking about this, and it wouldn't be enough. It's quite a lot packed into one little question. So, we've been thinking about and writing about it and working with the government in an advisory capacity on how to figure out what to do about this really powerful technology. And there's just so many ways you could slice it. When we think about applications of AI in industries that are already regulated, like healthcare, hiring, and financial services, there are already tons of rules and regulations that you have to follow. It being AI doesn't change that. And I think the executive order that we just saw also underscores this by saying that it's not the federal government, or at least not the executive branch's job or really their even ability to regulate use cases of AI that already have guidance, and they have entire agencies who are set up to cater to what those industries are doing. And that will continue with a great deal of new rule setting and guidance through these federal agencies and the generation of a lot of new reports that will come out to inform further actions. But those actions really need to be taken through Congress. So when we think about what does the executive order do for the average industry AI practitioner, not a lot. There's a lot to come in the next 18 months or so. But there are a few key things.
So what was the executive order? What did it say exactly?
Yeah. So, mainly it says if you're training a model above a certain size and that size is extraordinarily large, then you're going to be subject to some additional reporting requirements. And there may even be alerts that come from the compute companies, like AWS, that tattle on you to the government that says, hey, somebody's initiating a really big training run. And that's really the most impactful piece of it for the fact that they had to invoke the Defense Production Act to accomplish it. Pretty much everything else is instructions to the agencies and the bodies that already exist that say either you need to clarify rules for the people that you govern, or you need to create reports so that we can start to make some decisions. But importantly, really, truly meaningful regulation that's durable would just have to come to Congress. It would have to come through the legislative branch. That's just a limitation of our government and the intent of the balance of power.
That's very clear. Explains why you work with the government. This is awesome. So maybe back up a bit. If you can share what led to you creating Vera AI, and maybe briefly touch on your experience in careers, but kind of what led you to have this passion for what you're doing now and what it does.
Super, absolutely. Because it's kind of it is a funny story. And, thinking into the beginnings of my career, I was one of these, I was part of one of these earlier waves of chatbots where we weren't really thinking about bias or explainability because it just didn't work very well. And so these issues were less top of mind than just making it behave in an ordinary way and doing the things that we had asked it to do. But I had my aha moment, which is for now, everybody else seems to have caught up with the advent of ChatGPT. In 2017, when my job was to work for a computer vision company, another startup here in New York that was training custom models for our clients in all kinds of industries. And that was some medical diagnosis, that was some satellite footagery and monitoring climate change for science, and some, online moderation, which is just an evergreen problem. And my team's job was to collect and label data and then use no-code tools to train models out of that data. And so we saw exactly how powerful this technology is, and way, way, way too many ways that it could screw up and be a little less than predictable, a little less wholesome, shall we say. So I think at the time, thinking back, a lot of people in industry, a lot of data scientists would have preferred to ignore that these issues existed. And they just said, models aren't biased. There's just no, research, and there's no proof, and blah, blah, blah. And civil society pushed back and did the research and proved conclusively that these things can happen and that models have problems.
What kind of problem can you speak to? Because a lot of people don't know, in the tech world, we kind of hear a little bit of this, but if you're not heavy in this, what kind of bias or what kind of problems do these models have?
Sure. I'll tell you a story. So at the time, I was managing a team of people all over the world who were generating labels for images, and we were building a moderation data set for a company that wanted to let users post images of things. They needed a rating system. So this is X-rated. We don't want it on our site. This is R-rated, PG-13, so on. And we sent the last, group of unlabeled data off to a country overseas. And when it came back, all of the couples who were fully clothed, holding hands, but happened to be of the same gender were marked as explicit, as, completely inappropriate for anyone to view. And we didn't realize until later that this was because homosexuality was illegal in that country at that time. So you can imagine what would have happened if that data set had become a model that was automatically approving or denying people's access or ability to post on that website. Could have been a huge, huge disaster, both for society, for the community, and of course for the company's brand. So at many times when we say models have problems, 8 or 9 times out of 10, it's coming from the data and the choices, the design choices that are made in building the model. And these problems, have been shown time and time again. But the most famous one was Gender Shades, Joy Buolamwini's work about how facial recognition algorithms weren't recognizing women, and particularly women of color, as accurately as they were the majority group, or the white men of the world.
That was very well answered. So continue on with the with the story and what led to ask Vera.
Well, I decided that we couldn't just hide our heads in the sand about it. If we wanted to Star Trek future that I would like to live in, then we need to face these problems and fix them. And so I actually started writing about it. It sort of went mini viral, and then I ended up joining really early one of the very first model ops companies called Arthur. I was number 3. The only non-engineer at the company, and watched it grow from pre-seed all the way through Series B. And I just knew that what we were doing, really needed a more proactive approach to not just witness or observe the things that AI is doing, but do something about it and take in the steps to stop the bad things you don't want happening from happening. And that gives people a lot more comfort in deploying AI when they know they can eliminate some of the most pressing risks.
And so what does the business actually do?
Well, Vera sits in between models and users, and it says, first and foremost, should you be sharing this with an AI? That could be something really simple like PII or password by accident if you're trying to debug some code. Or it could be more complicated, like does your organization want you to use ChatGPT to, for instance, diagnose a patient? Just a side personal preference here, please do not use ChatGPT to diagnose patients. The day may come when AI can do medical tasks, but that is not today, especially not the commercially available over-the-counter ones. So anyway, first and foremost, should you be asking a model this question? And then on the flip side, models say a lot of really unpredictable, dumb, and sometimes toxic things in response, often even criminal. So ChatGPT, as just the red herring here, is been caught, helping people to commit crimes. Other models have encouraged people to harm themselves. And it can be, vulnerable to a form of injection attack called a prompt hack. So if you don't want your models to respond, for instance, as, Shakespeare doing a poem in iambic pentameter that helps people commit a crime, then we can help you stop that from happening. So we first and foremost transform your question into something appropriate. We do the same thing to the model responses.
Is it a software layer that sits in the middle, like of the inputs and the outputs? Is that the way it works?
Like who would be the customer? Maybe give an example.
Yeah. That's exactly right. So we're deep in conversation with a lot of our early design partners and lots of people in the healthcare space who are looking to use generative AI to accelerate claims processing and just internal productivity. So if you want your team to be able to, for instance, use generative AI to ask questions of your PTO policy or something like that, then we provide the guardrails that make sure they're asking questions that are allowed and also make sure that they're accessing systems in a way that's appropriate. So taking your policies and enforcing them through either an API or through a ChatGPT-like chat box experience.
I see. And then you filter those and then pass them to, say, a ChatGPT, or do you have your own ChatGPT competitor, if you will?
We are not a large language model company. We $2.7 million will not get you there. If you're wondering, maybe times of thousands, then maybe we can talk. But we believe that no one model vendor is going to dominate this space. I mean, think about how fast new models are coming out every single day. They're getting bigger, they're getting better, they're getting more effective. And so you don't want to be locked into OpenAI. You don't want to be locked into Anthropic. And in fact, you can actually set one policy and have that same policy apply across any one or all of the 1,400 models that we support out of the box. That's external open source models, closed source models like Anthropic, but also models you train in-house, because you're not going to want to rely on OpenAI forever.
So then you are just that filter, and then you can select whatever model you want behind that. And you also then parse back their response to make sure it conforms to the policies.
That's exactly
right. A little off topic, but Sarah Silverman, the comedian, today, I saw how she had sued OpenAI because of using content from her book. And I think the guy who wrote Game of Thrones and a bunch of other writers are also suing OpenAI and these models, claiming that AI is not actually creating something new, but rather using previous work that these people have put a lot of years into making and kind of reshuffling it around. I'm curious what you think of that. I know some people think no, it actually is creating something new. So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on? I mean, obviously you're not a lawyer and you're not like adjudicating this, but more just as friends talking. What would you say at a cocktail party to this?
Well, as friends, let me first reiterate: I am not a lawyer, but I do have a very sort of hobbyist fascination with this issue because it's so complicated. So we did have a briefing on the federal committee that I'm on, the National AI Advisory Committee, where we invited a bunch of people who are lawyers in intellectual property and copyright to come and speak to us. And one of the major concerns that our clients have about using these models is that they're going to be liable, not just OpenAI, but that they'll be liable for using material that's generated from a model, an AI model, if it's very similar to something that exists that has been quote unquote stolen, like a Sarah Silverman stand-up session, but also just like a piece of code that was on GitHub. And a lot of open source developers are suing Copilot for that exact reason. So using Vera, you can block the generation of things that might, while these cases are still in flux, might violate some of these copyright concerns. And that's a big, big thing that's stopping people from deploying AI right now. But if you're asking me for like a technical explanation of the law, I can say that one of the lawyers on this briefing was very clear and specific, and he had an interesting point that the question of, we're talking about fair use. If it's a copyrighted material, but you're doing a parody or you're doing something, derivative of that, then that is legal. But apparently, and I believe that it was Napster was the case, but please don't quote me on that. But it has been addressed in court before that if you steal the material that is copyrighted and then alter it, that is not protected under fair use. So it's going to be a very interesting nitpicky point, one of many that's going to be settled with this court case. And I think it's one that we all need to be watching very closely because the downstream liability is just absolutely outrageously scary for a lot of people. Yeah.
I mean, in my business, we do a lot of crawling of the web and the public web. And a lot of this is governed by fair use laws in the US, some of which have gone to the Supreme Court. And AI has kind of turned those things on its head because, an argument is, well, AI models are just like people, right? We consume information, we think about it, we reflect it, and then we come up with things. And, the counter argument is, yeah, but it's like a million people as one brain and argue, it's very difficult. Like you said, I'm curious, like, how do you think, I think that when people talk about AI, they're of almost two minds. One is it's going to save the world, right? That's one. And then the other is it's going to destroy the world. Those are the two kind of, and oftentimes I think what I hear is it's going to destroy the world. And I'm curious how you think of kind of ethical or good uses of AI. What do you see in like a positive way over the next 2, 3, 4 years? Not 20 years, but how do you see AI being used in a positive and ethical way?
Yeah, there are so many things to be really excited about. I think in particular, the ability for AI to improve the lives and the participation in the workforce for people with disabilities is massive. If you talk to the disability community, and we've had a number of briefings from different affinity groups and organizations and civil society and nonprofit, that they come together and they say, this is a game changer for people who are blind. It's a game changer for people who have trouble with verbal elements of conversation and participating in the workplace. It's just absolutely going to revolutionize their entire lives and create much better quality outcomes for people in that space. I'm also very, very excited in the next few years about AI's impact on sciences. So we think about healthcare, and this is kind of like a very vague, amorphous, maybe we'll cure cancer from it. I don't know. I'm not going to make anything that like big claim, but I will say, AlphaFold is not generative AI. It has nothing to do with ChatGPT, but it's a reinforcement learning project that in many ways humans come in and they say, these are the rules. This is the way that a molecule can behave. This is things it can do. It can bond to this, but not that. It has to have this characteristic. And then you throw like a mountain of compute power at the problem within those parameters that human beings set. So we can do that with biology, and it worked pretty darn well. Think about what we can do with physics. You know, we're talking about exploring the universe, cold fusion, renewable energy. The laws of physics are pretty well set. So those are definitive rules that we can program into, again, not ChatGPT, but like a big scientific project. Hopefully that's participatory with the government and a bunch of academic institutions to figure out some of the questions that have plagued humanity for as long as we've been around.
I love that. I love optimistic views.
I can take the other one if you'd prefer. You want to talk about the world ending scenarios?
Let's go to the world ending scenario.
No.
Well, I'm curious. Like, what is the world ending scenario?
I have to pick one.
Oh boy, there's several. There's only one good positive outcome scenario, and there's several world ending ones.
Not at all. No. I mean, so I think like one of the major concerns that social scientists have right now are that people over-index on the outputs of machines as truth. So this is dangerous as we enter an election season. It's dangerous for intentional disinformation, misinformation, equality across the world and the use of AI by authoritarian governments. I mean, this is just one of many practical, tangible things that we should be worried about right now. And the good news is there are very smart people within this government and all over the world who are thinking about it. I'm not going to bore you with things like the paperclip optimization problem. I'm much more practical than that. But you haven't never. Okay, so this is
what is the paperclip optimization problem? I've never heard this. Have you heard this, Flavio?
I don't think she thought we already knew it.
Yeah, I don't know what this is. What is it?
Oh my goodness. So yes, there's whole bodies of work, in fact, in philosophy where people worry about super intelligent machines who are given some sort of a task, and then they perform on that task, and it's impossible to shut them down because they find weird, smarter than human ways of achieving that task at all costs. And in the thought experiment, you have this machine whose job it is to make paperclips, and so it ends up turning the entire world into paperclips, right? So philosophers love to talk about this stuff. I'm much more concerned with the realistic, practical things that we can work on right now.
Are you saying that the machine was told to focus on paperclips, and because of that, it just becomes the whole world becomes paperclips? Is that the idea?
You're a paperclip. I'm a paperclip. Flavio, you're also a bunch of paperclips. We're all paperclips now. That's the end of the world.
Pretty fun end of the world, maybe. All right.
No, I like the creativity though. It's much better than some of the other endings.
Nuclear war. Yeah.
Well, so then back on entrepreneurship, what do you think is different about starting an AI company than a regular startup? I guess, do you think there's something about these startups that are now focused on AI that you find is different?
Lots of things. Well, there was an early wave of startups that were powered almost entirely by GPT-4 that faced a lot of trouble because OpenAI is just releasing a great number of features. One of the fastest growing startups of all time ended up having to pivot because GPT-4 was just made widely available. So if you're relying on, and this, should have been clear from the very beginning, if you don't really have what, we would call a moat, then you are at risk because these companies have billions of dollars of money and some brilliant business people behind the scenes who are going to put you out of business. It's just really, it sucks, but that is a real concern. I think the biggest difference between starting an AI company and starting another, traditional software company is when you start a traditional software company, you have a pretty good idea of whether what you're trying to do is in fact possible, as opposed to with an AI company where it all just comes from experimentation and instinct. So I didn't expect that when I was getting started in this business, just how much the sort of perceptual, squishy, opinionated, I think that it'll do this, I think we should try that kind of behavior was actually the way it works. And so that's been a really fun lesson to learn.
That's so interesting. It's almost like starting a new medication or therapy in medicine that you're kind of just experimenting different things, hoping that one of them is going to just take off. Although then you don't have a patent, which seems like once you do figure it out, other people can copy it. So you need a moat on top of that too. Is that what you're saying?
It's so true. But moats, I think, are way over discussed. I'll say, and especially when it comes to AI, there's this really famous Google memo that linked when they were talking about Bard, their big GPT killer. And the quote says, I'm going to mangle it, but something along the lines of like, we don't have a moat and nobody else does either. So the capabilities are kind of limited by the techniques that are available that are all open source, and then the amount of data, which is really just the entire English speaking internet. So how do you compete or differentiate? Well, we do it with service, like we believe that customers can't do this on their own. They need help. They need people to guide them. And I think we'll see a continuing trend in that direction, that the companies who put people first and put their customers on a pedestal will be poised to outcompete the ones who just really couldn't be bothered, to accept feature requests or to give good service. And that's something that I've always prided myself in the companies that I've been a part of on doing very well.
I see. So part of it is still, hey, building good product is a competitive advantage too. Although, it seems like if you have billions of dollars to spend on cloud computing, that's almost a bit of a moat in and of itself. I was reading, by the way, from the founder of DuckDuckGo, because people are like, hey, how come DuckDuckGo isn't as good as Google or whatever? And he was like, Google spends, I don't know, $1 billion or $2 billion a year scanning the internet. So unless you have a couple $1 billion to spend every year, you're not going to be able to have search results as good as Google. And that's the way it's going to be. So, very cool. All right. So moving on to what founder secrets, I guess, would you want to share with entrepreneurs wanting to get started, maybe in AI, but also maybe in entrepreneurship in general?
Oh man, I love this. This is what I live for. There's so many incredible mentors who taught me lesson after lesson. And then the ones that you think, and then you get in the seat and it's just a lot harder than you thought it was going to be. So I would say maybe the first one is, it's okay to be a little delusional. It's okay because you have to believe that you can do this, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't until you, I don't know, maybe just like actually run out of money. Because usually if there's any way or shape or possibility for you to figure out how to make it work, then you will. And there have been, for us, I love the idea of just piercing the veil and being realistic about what it's like. It took us a while to figure out really product market fit and have the right people in place and team and culture. And it didn't happen immediately. It didn't happen with our first or second vision of what we thought we were going to build and what we thought people would buy. So be ready. So this is the second big lesson. So first of all, be a little delusional. Number 2 is probably don't give up until you absolutely have to. And then number 3 is be ready to embrace change. It can't just be that you think that you're okay with change or that you have to really love it. You have to want it. Because if you're doing it right, then you're going to be changing a lot. The growth is change. You have to be able to turn on a dime and give your team what they need to grow and foster, and give your clients what they need to spend more money with you. And, you just have to be prepared for it. You have to expect it and sense it as soon as it happens so you can react in the right way.
You mentioned mentors and peers. How do you find mentors and peers? So how do you find community, and how are you getting this kind of support so you can learn these things?
Yeah, well, I'm lucky because New York's startup scene's pretty small. In fact, it's much bigger now than when I started, a million years ago. But we all kind of know each other. All the VCs know and everybody's got a Slack. So I'm in at least 20,000 different Slack channels and WhatsApp groups and things like that. So, you find people that you really vibe with. And there have been some people I've just worked alongside for years and years. And we have our own little, even alumni from a company that we used to work at 5 years ago. They call it Valhalla. Like when you leave, we still get new people joining. But we're a tightly knit community. And we all just really loved that period of all of our lives. It was so much fun. But the other thing you can do is just ask. I love getting emails I sometimes get them from high school students who have followed my work. And you have to answer those, right? Like to people in power, some people I've cold emailed have meant the world to me. And I've just reached out to, Kathy Baxter at Salesforce and just like, you have my dream job. How do I how do I do that? And she was willing to take a call with me. And so I try to pay that forward and really just preparing the next generation to be as crazy and masochistic as we three are to try to do what we're trying to do here. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fun, but like, come on, we can admit it's hard, right?
Yeah. I would say some days it's actually not fun either. But I'm curious if, like, if someone's listening to this and they're not in tech at all, right? Maybe they're in accounting, or they're a painting person or painting company. Do you think that there's value to those people, or maybe to those small business owners in AI, or do you think it's way too early for those kinds of uses?
Oh, I think those are some of the most interesting cases where we can take something that is monotonous or boring or is costing you a lot of admin and then automate it. And it doesn't even have to be in a big professional, governed model ops kind of like deployment stack kind of way. I mean, some of these off-the-shelf models do a pretty good job of being, first of all, a sounding board, help you bounce ideas around and check for grammar, rewrite it in a perfect style or type of persona. I agree. I'm on the side that says that AI is not really creating anything new, but what it is good at is blending things that you don't normally see. So take a poem or like a sea shanty, but do it in iambic pentameter. AI can do that. And it's really interesting to see.
I don't know any of the words you just said.
What?
Sea shander.
You know what a sea shanty is? It's like, little pirates, like a little jaunty tune.
Oh, it's a song. Yeah. Oh, I was way off.
But that stuff's great for viral marketing, for copy, for your bookstore. You can have like flyers that have all these crazy things on it. I don't know. Just brainstorming.
I love it. So one other question is, if someone is that high school student that reaches out to you, like the high school student that reached out to you, what advice are you giving the young people? What advice are you giving them?
Yeah, actually, I'm trying to help somebody do this right now. I offered to help him, thinking like, I know how to do it. Like, I started businesses. He just needs like an entry level job. Like, that seems like the easiest task I can easily help him out with. And then I started helping him, and I realized actually it was really hard, and I've had no success. I've added no value. So yeah, I'm wondering, how do you help that person, especially at that entry level where they don't have the experience and the connections and the insights and the knowledge?
Oh goodness, it's a case by case basis. I mean, I'm kind of sometimes I've been in a position to give internships. Like that's been fun. That's the easy stuff. When we can afford it, when we have the time to dedicate to help support their journey. Sometimes I tell them not to, sometimes they think that they're going to get into this like very fun world of algorithmic fairness, and it sounds cool and it's so fun and it's like social justice and tech and math and it seems really exciting. And then, you come to find out that they maybe are in it for the wrong reasons, or maybe they think it's going to be a certain way and it's not that way. Sometimes telling people that they need to figure out the practicalities of it by doing an internship, getting their feet wet with the real field is like very helpful. But a lot of times they just kind of want access to you and your brain and like figuring out, and they can learn a lot from your opinions just by hearing the way that you talk about it. If you believed the media, you would just look at startup founders and be like, oh, they're all, so like smart. They're also hardworking. They're all working out of their garages and like all of this other stuff. And like, but you don't hear just how hard it is. And what you really need to do to prepare yourself for that is like understand that you're giving up a social life for a really long time. And you're going to be, your company is going to be your best friend and your partner and your child for at least as long as it takes to get it off the ground. So I like it when I can give that sort of viewpoint to people and then they still want to do it. That's how you know you found someone really special.
Yeah, the first thing I say is don't do it.
Exactly.
Right. It's
like, are you sure?
It's like go work at Google or go work somewhere else. Go do something. So as we kind of bring it home here, I'm curious. Like, what is you just raised some money. You're looking for new customers and new clients. So what is an ideal kind of customer for you all that you're kind of looking for in case one is in the audience?
Oh gosh, well I hope you are, whoever you are. You would be a company that cares about AI and wants to do it right. And it doesn't really matter if you want your team to be using it just to draft emails or to bounce ideas around or make marketing copy, or if you want to build it into a product facing or customer facing feature in your product. We've got something that can help you do it and control the risks and make it so that you don't end up on the front page of the news when somebody uses your product to do something it shouldn't do. But whether or not, our team's here to help. And that's exactly why we got into this game, is to make AI possible and to make it into the kind of future that we all deserve to live in.
Oh, what a perfect way to wrap. Liz, how can people reach out to you so all the other high school students can ask you for free internships and advice?
Please do. Well, you can find us at askvera.io. You can email me at liz@askvera.io, and I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Liz.
Oh, this was fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flavio. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down. Hey.